Hello everyone, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Dara K. Fulton. I am an ESL teacher and welcome to the first video to my new series, Motivation for the ESL Teacher and Student. So as some of you may know already, I love ESL. If just in case if you don't know what ESL stands for, it stands for English as a Second Language. It is something that I'm very passionate about. It's dear to my heart. And it's something I would like to bring to the forefront because I feel there's a lot of misconceptions about the ESL field. There's a lot of misconceptions about ESL teachers as well as students. So before we get started, let me just give you a very brief background about my experience as an ESL teacher, and then we'll get started. So my ESL career started way back. Actually, I would like to say it started back in 2003, 2004, because I was still an undergrad in college. I am an alumni from New York City College of Technology, CUNY. Anyway, and so I started working there as a writing tutor, and most of my students or those who would come into the tutoring center were ESL students. And my job was to tutor them in their writing skills, whether it was writing for a paper, presentation, you name it. After that experience, I loved it so much because the feedback I received from my students were wonderful. I love those who I've worked with said, "Hey Dara, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have gotten an A," or "Thank you for your help." And that just motivated me to keep at this. I should note that during this time, it was not the happiest time for me. I'll get into that another time. And so I was trying to find myself. I didn't know where I wanted to go in my career. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So I needed a job, so I figured writing tutoring was the best way to go. Because of that experience, I went on to volunteer at a local library as an adult literacy tutor. And then from that point, I moved on to becoming an AmeriCorps member, which was shortly after I graduated from City Tech, which was in June of 2005. And for the next 2 years, I was an AmeriCorps member working as an ESL teacher in Chinatown. And let me just say, those were the best 2 years of my life because not only was it extremely challenging, but I learned a lot and I've met some very great people along the way. During the time I was in AmeriCorps, I was hired by a nonprofit agency also in Chinatown where I professionally worked as an ESL teacher. And so trying to juggle both jobs wasn't easy, but it gave me the experience that I needed to not only be a better ESL instructor, but to really understand what it takes to be an ESL teacher. Now let me just say that this wasn't a 1, 2, 3 situation. You know, I was an undergrad in college. I had no clue where my life was going. I just kind of fell into ESL and voila, here I am. Especially when I first taught ESL class. It was one of the most hardest and most challenging experiences. You know, I've had people who were extremely friendly. It was like, "Hey, we love you." And there was other students that was like, "Who are you? And why are you here?" It was very difficult. Not to mention, I was working in a population where English wasn't the main language spoken. I've had students who only lived in Chinatown. Some students even felt there was no need for them to learn English because all their resources was in their neighborhood. So it was a challenge. There was a lot of barriers that needed to overcome. One was the language barrier, then there's the cultural barriers, and then there's just the everyday getting to know one another challenges. So there's a lot of challenges involved. You know, it was an experience of a lifetime and I don't have any regrets. I love every bit of it. Although there was times where I wanted to quit, I didn't feel I was a great teacher. I just thought I was wasting my time because maybe students wasn't understanding the material that I was teaching. Maybe I wasn't presenting it the way I should have. A lot of things. But let me just say to any new teachers out there, just know that it will get better, and also know that you have to trust the process. You have to take your time. You can't expect miracles to happen overnight. Students are very open to learning English for the most part, but you're always going to have those who are resistant, and it may not be because they don't want to learn. It's just that maybe they're just trying to get used to being a student in a classroom setting, and sometimes it could be a cultural difference. If you are teaching students from around the world and your culture is not the same as theirs, keep that in mind. And then I did not even mention this, and my apologies, all of my students were adults. And one of the things I've learned working in the adult population is that if you're younger than your adult population, if you are younger than the students that you're teaching, expect challenges. You're always going to have those students who are older than you to tell you things like, you can't tell me what to do, I'm not going to listen to you, you're too young to understand, what are you doing here? That may just happen, and again, you may feel a little insecure, you may feel a little uncomfortable. It's okay. It's part of the process. One of the things that I want to do in this ESL series is not just to talk about just my experiences alone. It's my hope that I can bring up some important perspectives, important topics, things that we tend not to talk about amongst ourselves in the ESL community, or people who just don't know if there is an ESL community. There is an ESL community, just to let you know. I'm going to make the focus on adults because that's based on my experience, but I'm sure there are some tips I'm going to offer here that you can, I'm sure, can apply to children. But I'm only going to be really focusing on the adult population, and here's why. Most times when people are teaching ESL, there's an assumption that you're teaching children only. However, you do have us ESL teachers who work with the adult population, and oftentimes it's not taken as seriously as you would if you said you worked with the children. And this is very unfortunate, but it's just a reality. The other thing too is that there's also a misconception between adult learners, whether they're college level or if they're non-college level, or if they're business level or they're non-business level. So you might hear something called business English, where you're working with business professionals, which is something that does exist. Then you also have the college professors or the university ESL instructors, where they work with adults who are going to college or in the university. But here's something that I can speak on from personal experience, and something that is not often talked about. What about the populations where they're not in college, they're not business professionals, maybe they're new to the country, maybe they're looking to learn English but they're not sure where to go, maybe they don't have a strong network of people in this country where they can say, hey, where's the latest, where's the local ESL class? I would like to learn English. Or what about the population of adults who are too embarrassed to ask for help? They feel, well, I'm here, I'm going to make it the best way I know how. There are many reasons for adults who attend ESL classes. And I will be honest with you, and I will bring this up more in the series, that a lot of adults learners are coming to learn English, but there's other reasons behind that. And as an ESL teacher, you will quickly figure that out. You might have adult learners who are coming to learn English, but they might need some assistance in other things. They might ask you questions like, how can I apply for health care? How can I apply for a job because I need to work? My child is ready to start school. How do I go about that? So you might find yourself becoming a counselor in a way versus just only an ESL teacher. Sometimes adult learners I have come across take ESL classes just for company. Yeah, I'm serious. Maybe they're at the age now where they're retired from their work, or they're not really looking to go to college, they're not looking to be a business professional, they just want some company, and being amongst people that they can relate to or that they can speak with gives them a sense of purpose. So don't be surprised if you do have that student who is doing their best to learn this new language, but they're really just happy to be there because for them it's more of a social experience as opposed to an academic experience. There are a lot of misconceptions when it comes to ESL teaching as a whole. In our history in this field, ESL used to be very rigid and used to be very drill-like, where if we repeat the same thing or the same concept over and over and over, this is the best and most effective way for people to learn a language. Studies have shown later on that that is not necessarily the case. There's more things involved in just repeating the same concept over and over and over, and people memorize, because even through memorization you can forget what you've learned. Is that if you're not applying what you've learned in the classroom into your real life, oftentimes you will forget, or it just may not work for you. You may not feel it's important to know about say present perfect tense, because if you're not using it in your conversations with people you're talking to, or if you're not reading it or you're not seeing it, you may not feel it's very important to know that grammar point. Two things. One is sticking with the basics, and two, teaching my lessons in a way that students, when they leave the classroom, they can apply it to their daily lives. That is extremely important. It's also a good way for adults to feel motivated to use the language and to speak the language. The main thing is motivation. One of the things that I haven't seen a lot of from previous work experiences, even currently, there's not enough motivation for both the student and the teacher. A lot of times as teachers, sometimes it's an individual thing where we will motivate and encourage our students, but you still have some teachers out there who don't feel that's very effective. They may not think doing this, giving applause, or saying, hey, good job, is effective. They kind of want to just keep it rigid and kind of formal, and it is what it is. See, I'm very colorful, I'm very bubbly, so anyone who comes into my classroom, get ready to smile, get ready to have a good time, because English should not be a stressful experience. Learning English should be a fun experience, but an experience that can be beneficial to you in your daily life. So it's my hope that through this ESL series, that the topics that I present to you will be of help to you as a teacher as well as an ESL student. Because let me just say this, some ESL students do become teachers, okay? And they just might follow in your footsteps. So don't assume because they're in your classroom today that they may not end up being an ESL teacher to somebody else tomorrow. The possibilities are limitless, okay? One of the things we just have to keep in mind is you want to always stay motivated, whether you're a teacher or a student. You want to keep going. You have to remember your purpose. Why are you doing this? And that's something I'm going to address, because I feel there's a misconception that when you become an ESL teacher, it's just something to do. You make a little money and you go do your own thing. And actually, that's not the case. There are some of us out there who take this very seriously. ESL teaching is a real profession. It offends me highly when people tell me that you're not a real teacher. Why? When you educate, you are a teacher, whether it's a classroom, whether it's one-on-one. So you're going to have a lot of ignorance being thrown at you. Trust me, you're going to have a lot of people who are going to look at you and think what you're doing is stupid, a waste of time, and all these other things. But as a teacher, you have to stand tall and remember that you're doing this for a greater good. For my ESL students out there, remember, just because you're an adult doesn't mean that somehow you're not intelligent or you're not a smart person. Because there will be students who will say, I'm stupid because I don't speak English. No, you're not. Continue doing what you do. Stay on the course. And it's my hope that through my series and the videos that I will be posting regarding these issues will be a motivator to you and will encourage you to continue doing this great, great work, this great, great profession that I love tremendously called ESL. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you very soon.